The story begins inside Rossmore Prison, where two inmates were standing face to face, ready to fight. John threw the first punch, but then another inmate, Nelson, pulled out his screwdriver. But John had also brought his weapons with him. He threw a knife at Nelson, but he ducked just in time. The two lunged at each other, but the scuffle soon escalated into a wrestling match. As soon as John got the chance, he stabbed Nelson with his knife. But instead of stabbing, the knife broke. It turned out Nelson was wearing a stolen license plate under his uniform. This impressed John. John's story is quite unique. He has been in and out of prison since the age of 8. He started when he stole a lottery company's van as a child, then walked straight into the bank with their large check, saying, "Deposit it in my account." "Hey kid, where's your account?" The police arrested him and took him straight to Judge Nelson Bitterman. The judge not only sentenced him to 7 years in prison, but also insulted him. John listened to all this and said nothing. But the anger in his eyes was clear. The judge delivered the verdict, and that's when his jail time began. A few years later, when he was released, he tried to rob 2 policemen at gunpoint. He also said, "I can kill you." But even when they were standing face to face, he missed his target. Then he was arrested again and made to stand before Judge Bitterman. The same courtroom, the same old speech, and the same jail time again. Now, at the age of 24, he came out again. But within 6 months, he was back in jail for stealing a car. This time the judge said, "If you don't know how to steal, you can't commit a crime. Why do you keep doing it when you get caught? Are you crazy?" John wasn't just hurt by the punishment. The judge always taunted him, saying, "You're a total idiot." But this time, after coming out, he decided to take revenge on the judge. "I'll teach him a lesson." He called the courthouse to talk to the judge. But the receptionist told him that Judge Bitterman was no longer alive. "I mean, the judge hadn't retired," he said. "He was dead." He was so enraged he thought, "I would have killed him a few days ago." He angrily shook the phone. Then he left the booth and, in a fit of rage, fired shots into the phone. Then he went to a bar to calm down. There, he came across a newspaper. The article was about the judge's son, Nelson Bitterman IV. The father and son shared the same name. Now it dawned on him that he would avenge his father on his son. The next morning, he went to a Bitterman Foundation event held in memory of the judge. While the judge's son, Nelson, was on stage speaking glowing words about his father, John sneaked into his car, emptied his asthma pump, and spat into his drink. After the speech was over, Nelson got into his car and left for the office, where some important people were waiting for him. As he sipped his drink, he noticed a strange taste. The taste was a little strange, so he wondered if something had been spiked. Meanwhile, John was driving alongside, following him. Suddenly, Nelson needed his asthma pump. He pulled out his inhaler, which was completely empty because John had already emptied it. Nelson was horrified to see the empty pump. He gasped for breath. He had an asthma attack. He hurried to a pharmacy, panting heavily. His throat was choked, and he couldn't speak. He frantically searched for the pump on the counter. He struggled, running everywhere, looking for his pump. Meanwhile, the shop owner, the old man, thought Nelson was stealing. Finally, when he found the pump, he tried to pretend, "I didn't come to harm you." Just as he was raising his hands, John fired a shot into the air from outside. The old man, hearing the sound, thought Nelson had a gun. He quickly pressed the alarm to call the police, and the old woman pulled out a long gun. Meanwhile, John was happy, his mission accomplished. The judge's beloved son would now be held at gunpoint for robbery. Nelson was now in custody, yelling at his lawyer, Dwayne. CCTV clearly showed him creating a ruckus inside the shop. His lawyer said, "Look, all the evidence is against you. So, it's best you confess your crime. And he'll have to resign as chairman of the Bitterman Foundation." His lawyer, Dwayne, was speaking to the entire board on speaker. Everyone agreed that Nelson's removal would be the right thing to do. However, when Dwayne was brought before the judge, he tried to talk to him. He said, "Look, I can be of great help to you. You must know my father. We have a lot of money. You can take as much as you need." But Judge Ava didn't like this at all. She told him to sit down and wait like everyone else. "We'll talk to you when your turn comes." The trial soon began, and the jury was filled with a strange group of people. As soon as they saw the CCTV footage, they made up their minds that this man was the robber. Nelson's lawyer, Dwayne, was also a total jerk. He gave a terrible defense, telling the jury, he told me, "Look, watching Jurassic Park, we think dinosaurs are real. But they're not real, right? This CCTV footage looks real. But who knows if it is real or not? Anything can happen on camera. He's a good guy. Let him go. But despite all this, everyone in the jury still thought Nelson was the culprit. Judge Ava sentenced him to 5 years in prison, and at this moment, John saw Nelson for the first time, walking the same path his father had repeatedly taken him on. Later, he was sitting with his friends, smoking a cigarette, but his mind still wasn't at peace. Just then, 2 men knocked on his door. They had come to buy drugs from him. He understood they were police, but he still invited them inside and sold them the drugs. As soon as he left, John told his friends that if they didn't want to go to jail, they should run away, because he knew what was coming. He was going back to prison, and this time he was doing it knowingly. He didn't engage in any drama during his first hearing. When he was brought before the judge, he quietly confessed his crime and asked for the funeral and prison to serve his sentence, because Nelson was going there. The judge agreed and sent him to the same prison. Nelson and John were then sent to prison on the same bus. The atmosphere on the way was quite awkward, but John, being affectionate, asked Nelson his name and said he hoped they would stay together in prison. He promised that if they stayed with him, they would survive. Upon arriving at the prison, the new prisoners lined up to meet the warden for the first time. But their faces fell upon hearing the warden's words. The warden said, "If you don't want to fight, don't talk to anyone. And if you do get into a fight, don't complain about anyone. If you think something's wrong in prison, keep your thoughts to yourself, because I don't care." After this, John managed to get Nelson's room next to his. Now he had found his true purpose in life, to make life more difficult for the old judge's son. When they both entered their cell, the rich boy took a look at the toilet and burst into tears. But John warned him to stop crying. If someone sees you, they'll eat you alive. Even if you're scared, don't show it. Okay? While Nelson pretended to be brave, the other prisoners, passing by, laughed. And thus began the prison story of the 4th generation of the Buterman family. Well, during lunch, they went to the canteen together. John had spent a lot of time in this prison, so he knew a lot about everyone. He pointed to Nelson and told him that he was Leonard, the leader of the White Kingdom gang. They were very good people. They don't say anything to anyone. John was deliberately trying to frame Nelson. The two were talking while eating when Leonard pounced on another prisoner, threw him directly onto their table, and stabbed him to death. John quietly moved aside, but Nelson remained frozen. Soon, the guards came running and asked Nelson who had killed him. At John's signal, Nelson told them it was Leonard. And then, poor Nelson joined Leonard's enemies. Back in the cell, John scolded him, asking why he had spoken out of turn. Nelson replied, "You were the one who said it." "Oh, no, I was hinting at something else. You misunderstood me." A little while later, while everyone was bathing in the bathroom, Barry approached Nelson. He was a burly, dark-haired man. His eyes were fixed on Nelson. But John stepped forward and threatened everyone. "This is mine." "Okay." But then Barry started saying, "How can we believe this?" To prove his point, he slapped Bitterman's backside hard. "This is my property. It's okay to stay away from it." Later, Dwayne came to visit Nelson in jail. Nelson said, "Get me out as soon as possible. I'm becoming people's property here." But now Dwayne started saying, "You don't have control of the Bitterman Foundation anymore. Where do you have the money to fight the case, sir?" His lawyer was also teasing him. Meanwhile, John made every day sure that Nelson's prison life was a headache. Every day, the man in the cell next to his would punch him. For every punch, he would receive a pack of cigarettes, and he would get some junk food from John. One day, Nelson was sitting in the bathroom, biting his nails like a nymphomaniac. Barry came in, and seeing Nelson said, "I commit this same crime again and again. I'm a man. I love men." Seeing the intensity of his love, John agreed, but in return, he demanded a lot of cigarettes and some other goods. He had charged Nelson a high price, even though Barry agreed. After this, John made a deal with a guard to take him out of the room under any pretext. As soon as the cell door opened, Nelson panicked. But Barry said, "Relax, bro. Why are you so nervous? Nothing will happen." But within seconds, Barry's men had him picked up. Putting a paper bag over his head, they took him to Barry's room. Barry welcomed him, offering him drinks. As soon as Barry saw him, he said, "Your stomach is completely out, isn't it?" He treated Nelson like a newlywed bride, saying, "Stop being so fussy, come to me." Poor Nelson was trembling with fear. He was in love, but he had no choice. Mary said, "I really love you, and for today, I'm leaving you like this, my love. But remember one thing, I'll do whatever I want, and don't refuse me. Time passed, and Nelson developed a habit of writing his diary. Today he was sitting on the floor, his back against the iron bars, writing in his diary. One of Leonard's men came and urinated on his diary. He had just come to warn him that Leonard would soon be released from solitary confinement. And what happens to you then will terrify you. John then explained to him that Leonard wouldn't hit him immediately. He would beat him repeatedly, slowly inflicting pain, and maybe one day, after many months, he would kill him if he felt like it. Things in the Cafid area worsened. John said, "I heard it's time to kill you, Fix." Nelson decided to go and talk to him. John knew this was a big mistake. Still, he said, yes, of course, everything can be made right. Nelson then went to Leonard's gang's table and began a heartfelt speech. "Brother, if a person makes a mistake, the one who forgives is the elder, isn't he? Now you're the elder." But as soon as he heard this, Leonard stuck a thorn in one of his legs. Then, as Nelson screamed, he stuck a thorn in his other leg as well and said, "Yes, it's okay now." The situation was even. Poor Nelson bent down and cried. Leonard then said, "You have courage, boy. Besides you, the only person who stood in front of me like this was my own father. But you know, I killed him and came here." Despite being a fool, Nelson understood that his time was near. The poor fellow limped back to his table and told his friend John that his death had been postponed for a few days. That night in their cell, John told him that he had only 2 or 4 options. The first was that he wouldn't like it. The second was to fight him alone. The third was that he would slowly kill him. So just wait. When he didn't like any of these options, John suggested a fourth option. Commit some crime and go to solitary confinement. They couldn't kill him there. Hearing this, Nelson said that was fine. But how would he get it? But before he could ask anything, John threw his ball at the guard and then hid behind Nelson. As soon as the guard arrived, John punched him in the face from behind. It appeared as if Nelson had landed the punch, and the guards picked him up and put him in solitary confinement, far away from everyone. After 2 days in that dark compartment, with no light, no time, only his own thoughts, he was slowly going insane. When the guards brought Nelson back to his cell, he was completely shaken. Then he went to an old dealer in the prison. He said, "Brother, I'm tired of this life. I want to get rid of all my sorrows." And who knows what the dealer was up to? He thought Nelson wanted to be free from life itself. Instead of giving Nelson something sedative, he gave him poison. Nelson didn't ask too many questions and calmly brought the medicine. There, in their cell, John saw Leonard's entire crew heading toward them. Without a word, he quietly left. Within seconds, the gang was inside. The leader told everyone else to wait outside. "I'll handle this alone." He attacked, but Nelson didn't give up. He blocked a few punches, even landed a half knock. Then he climbed onto the top bunk and landed a couple good kicks. Leonard's nose was bleeding. Suddenly, a syringe fell from above. It was filled with the same poison Nelson had brought. Leonard stopped and asked what it was. Nelson said, "Things like this will end all your stress. It'll be fun." That's what I was told. Hearing this, Leonard took the syringe, and luckily, Nelson's problem was solved. The noise outside the cell suddenly subsided. Nelson dragged Leonard's body out and told his companions that if anyone else wanted to die, they should come inside. Upon hearing this, the rest of the gang immediately retreated. Just then, John entered the cell. He pretended to be with Nelson. Then, calmly, he said that killing someone in prison adds 20 years to his sentence. But Nelson simply smiled slightly and said, "I didn't kill anyone." Then, John whispered, "I hadn't thought of that." Nelson immediately grabbed him, asking, "What did you want me to die for?" But John cleverly avoided the question. When Nelson entered the canteen with John, the entire hall fell silent. Just then, a boy from the White Kingdom gang came from behind. John immediately turned around, a pitchfork ready in his hand. He was thinking a fight was about to break out. But he had come not to fight, but to extend a hand of friendship. He said that Leonard was always bothering us. So you freed us. Now everyone looked at Nelson with respect, because he had killed the most dangerous prisoner in the prison. John thought to himself that he had to fight someone. Otherwise, people would think he was too strong. He told another prisoner to stand up, saying, "The boss has to sit down." He didn't get up at first, but then Nelson cursed him and told him to stand up, just to show off his power. After which, the prisoner stood there quietly. He got out. But this made John realize that his whole plan had backfired. A little while later, Nelson went to the bathroom and bumped into Barry again, who started saying, "Do you remember what we talked about?" When Barry approached him in his romantic style, Nelson pushed him hard and punched him twice, right in the face. Barry, enraged, grabbed him by the throat. But Nelson said, "You said you loved me. A little bickering is okay in love, isn't it?" Hearing this, Barry stopped. The poor guy became emotional. Nelson also extended his arms. "Come, hug me." Barry immediately started approaching him. But just then, the White Kingdom gang arrived. They had already gotten word that Barry was doing something wrong with their new partner. They all pounced on Barry together. Nelson interrupted and shouted, "Stop it." But by then the guards had arrived, and this time they thought John had done everything, sitting in the corner like a boss, watching everything. This time, John was picked up and put in a lockbox. When he came out, the atmosphere of the prison had completely changed. His roommate, Nelson, was now everyone's favorite. He started teaching karate to the other prisoners. People laughed at his jokes. Even here, he would always be around someone. Furthermore, he became the leader of the prison theater group. Now, Nelson went to John and thanked him. He said, "Brother, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to endure all this. You taught me how to live." Seeing all this, John was completely shaken. Frustrated, he ransacked his cell. He had deliberately lost his freedom so that he could harass the judge's son, not watch him enjoy prison. Meanwhile, Barry and Nelson had become quite close. Very close. One day, Nelson was alone in his cell, and John came over. He started giving a long speech, saying, "I'm so proud of you, brother. How far you've come. Your hearing is tomorrow. I hope you'll be released." He held a can, which he handed to Nelson, saying, "This is our parting gift." But the can was already open. This made Nelson a little suspicious. But John immediately said, "I'm making you suspicious. I'm making you look bad." To allay suspicions, he took the first shot himself, and then pretended to be a slob, saying, "I'm really hurt." Hearing this, Nelson melted and drank the entire can in one go, which was a huge mistake. Something had been spiked in the drink. Within minutes, Nelson fell unconscious. John remained calm and vomited the medicine out. Then he quickly put his plan into action. The next morning, Nelson was taken to court for his hearing. He told the judges that prison had changed him. He had become a new person. But he had white power written on his forehead and Nazi symbols on his neck. Seeing this, the judges rejected his early release, stating that he should only be released after serving his sentence. Soon, Nelson also noticed the marks on his neck and forehead and realized who had done it. Returning to the cell, he pounced on John. A fierce scuffle ensued, with punches flying from both sides. But in the end, John took advantage of his veteran status and emerged victorious. While John was pinning him against the iron bars, he told the truth. "Your father punished me after punishment. He never gave me a chance to reform. It's because of that I sent you here. I brought you here." Hearing this, Nelson became very angry and slammed John's head on the iron of the bunk bed. Just then, the guards arrived and stopped their fight, saying, "If you two are going to fight, then fight properly." A fight was scheduled outside in the field, with no rules. The fight wouldn't end until one of them died. From then on, they were monitored 24 hours a day to prevent them from killing each other before the fight even began. All the guards and prisoners started betting on who would win. Money was at stake. Even the warden had placed a bet. Then one day, during visiting hours, someone came to see Nelson. It was Barry. Now released from prison, he couldn't bear life without his love, Nelson. He told them he was thinking of committing a crime and coming back. But Nelson told them not to do anything like that. "You're my only family in this world." Barry replied, "I'm willing to do anything for you. Just tell me once." Suddenly, an idea struck Nelson. Dwayne was playing golf in his office in another part of town. As soon as his phone rang, Nelson said, "Get me out of here, quickly." Dwayne reminded him, "You're not the chairman anymore. You don't have the money. How will you pay my fees?" Nelson replied, "I can't be the head. But my son can take my place. I've adopted someone. He'll be coming to your office." Just then, Barry burst into the office. He had a 150-pound son. He told Dwayne to get out because now the chairman's seat is his. Soon, a fight broke out between the two inmates. This is where the story began. John climbed on top of Nelson and then rubbed a piece of his shirt, which he had soaked in industrial cleaner, on Nelson's face. This was enough to knock Nelson off balance, and John kicked him hard. Then, both of them suddenly took out syringes to inject each other with poison. Suddenly, Nelson's mood changed. He changed. He said, "Let's stop everything. Let's accept the draw, right?" They both agreed, and then suddenly he said, "I've learned something here. Don't trust anyone." The next second, he injected John. But John had injected Nelson before dying. They both fell down together, as if dead. Soon, the medical team arrived and declared them dead. They were buried, and the power of the Biederman Foundation was completely transferred to Nelson's only son, Barry. But after everyone had left, Barry dug up the grave, and a living Nelson emerged. This was all part of the plan. Nelson had already obtained a drug from a dealer that could keep a person unconscious for 3 days. They injected each other with it. Barry had already paid the medical staff a large sum of money to buy it. Standing near the second grave, Nelson thought, "Let's just leave him to die." But then Barry became emotional and pulled John out. After a brief argument, they shook hands and buried their old grudge. A year later, we saw all of them living wonderful lives. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.